All right, good morning, everyone. We'll get started. My name is Brittany. I'm the Economic Development Specialist here at the Morris County Chamber of Commerce and Morris County Economic Development Corporation. The Agriculture and Resiliency Committee is a joint initiative between the Economic Development Corp and the county to assess what our resources are like as far as what businesses have to offer, what farms have to offer in the case of an emergency. And so we have also created a website that goes through many different lessons about home resiliency so that the community can also be best prepared because it really begins at the grassroots level. And so in conjunction with those lessons, we have also created this 4-week webinar series. This is week 2. And we are very excited to have the director of the Morris County Office of Emergency Management, Jeff Paul, with us today. He's going to be sharing about having your emergency kit and family disaster plan. And be sure to join us next week. We have another session, and that will be about edible landscaping, urban and community gardens, and minimizing food waste. So we are very excited. If you have any questions as we go, you can put them in the chat. We'll either answer them as we go if it's relevant to what Jeff is talking about, or we'll answer questions at the very end. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jeff. Thanks, Jeff.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much, Brittany. And just mic check, you can still hear me, correct?
Yep, everything's great.
Okay. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks so much for joining. As Brittany said, my name is Jeff Paul. I'm the director for the Morris County Office of Emergency Management. So today's presentation, I hope, will help to serve as a brief overview of emergency management and ultimately preparedness in general. My goal and my hope is to leave you with a better understanding of how you can be better prepared for you or your family. And before I get into the presentation, I really want to thank the Morris County Chamber of Commerce as well as Frank Pinto for putting together this educational series. I think it's extremely useful, and I think as this type of forum gets some legs out in the community that these opportunities are presenting themselves through the chamber, I think it is a great public service. So we are delighted to be part of this, and thanks for joining me today. All right, so here's what I aim to cover. I want everybody to understand emergency management as well as the local and global risks. We're going to talk about emergency kits, family disaster planning, what Morris County is doing, and how you can build resilience at home. My goal today is not to instill fear or kind of give it that dark cloud that disasters going to strike, but rather empower people to be better educated in the space of emergency management, disaster preparedness, in an effort to share that data amongst your own families to be better prepared. So that's ultimately our goals. So as a base to start off with, let's talk a little bit about what is emergency management, and then we'll progress as to how this process works from a preparedness perspective. So emergency management is really all about organizing and coordinating responses to major events. We, and actually you all, are very fortunate here in Morris County that we have a county administration as well as a board of county commissioners that fully support the public safety mission. I don't say that lightly. I think all too often in some communities, not Morris, it's people look at numbers versus what things should be provided for the public as it relates to safety. We all know there's a cost to doing everything, and there's certainly a cost to being prepared. There's a cost to having equipment and teams and training, in some cases for the days that we hope never happens. Unfortunately, we have had experiences here in Morris where those days have happened, and we continue to build on our program after every one of those experiences. And we continue to also prepare and spend money on to be ready for events that we hope that we never experience. So I'm going to talk a little about how we do that. All right. So we focus on 4 phases, and I'll take you through those phases. They are preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. So preparedness involves planning, training, exercising to ensure that the public, individuals, communities, organizations are ready to respond to emergencies. It includes developing emergency plans, conducting drills, educating the public, as I mentioned, building capabilities to manage potential incidents. Now, the way we work it here in Morris as it relates to planning, the 39 municipalities that make up the county, we have a process where those municipalities, all the municipalities in Morris County, are responsible to have an emergency operation plan. And that plan, we're actually in the middle of redoing all the plans for the municipalities right now, or I should say the municipalities are engaged in this process with us. And each town has, specific issues and needs, and sometimes emergencies in towns in the county are different. Some towns flood, some towns don't. So the preparedness levels for each of our towns can differ from one to the next. But regardless, everybody has to prepare, everybody has to have a plan, and the plan is specific to that municipality in case certain things occur. So that's the planning phase. As we get into response, and I do a lot of response in my arena, it's that is the immediate action that is taken to ensure safety, save lives, protect property, meet the basic human needs during or immediately after an emergency. This is the phase where we would deploy first responders, where we would activate our Morris County Emergency Operations Center, which I'll talk more about as we progress through the presentation, and providing medical care. One of my other roles on top of emergency management is I head up the county emergency um, medical services team. So the county ambulances um, come under my direction, as does the Special Operations Group, which is a specialty team, an ALS and BLS, Advanced Life Support and Basic Life Support, that supports SWAT and other VIP scenarios. So that's a little bit about response. On the recovery, that's where we look at restoring communities and systems back to normal or improved conditions. If sometimes you can't get right back to normal, you got to try to improve it, get things working following an emergency. But that's where we rebuild infrastructure. That's where financial assistance comes in, especially when there's a declaration. If we meet the threshold for, say, damages, look at, Hurricane Sandy is probably a good example of that. Um, that's where supporting mental health comes in, because there's usually an event that might have triggered some mental health issues in a particular community, and helping individuals and businesses return to stability. Um, and I'll talk a little about what's actually happening on Route 80 as we get up there, because we're in a mode now where we're doing some support, or I shouldn't say we are, but the state and federal government doing some support to the businesses that are impacted up in that environment. And that's all kind of under this whole, um, you know, uh, focus of what we do in emergency management. So that's recovery, and then mitigation involves the steps to reduce or eliminate the long-term risk and impact of the hazard. So this could be implementing building codes, land use planning, public education, infrastructure improvements to make communities more resilient to future disasters. This could be simply mitigation, flood mitigation, could be home buyouts in a particular community that have had repetitive losses to the point where it makes sense to um, purchase the property and turn that land into something different, so it's not a repeat, um, on the disaster list for every time it rains, we lose the structure kind of thing. So that's, mitigation, in essence, making it hurt less time, making it hurt less next time. And one of the communities I often focus on is Pequannock, that has done a lot of mitigation work um, from a flooding perspective, that literally has changed the way that town floods, which is much less than it did 5 and 10 years ago, because of a lot of the mitigation funding as well as cleanup that happened in that community. So that's another example of mitigation. So I always like to talk about the mission of, whatever organization, I'm speaking about, and certainly on as it relates to emergency management, we have a mission, and we're really passionate about that mission because it serves as the foundation and guiding purpose of um, what we do. And I'm just going to single out. If I'm not going to read I'm not going to read any of the slides, quite frankly. I'm just going to kind of talk about some words and phrases in there. And I want to talk about support because a lot of what we do is supportive to our local municipalities. We talk about professionalism because we really strive to be professional and provide exemplary service to the public. And we do that with honor, and ultimately we protect and serve. And all of that ends up, in certainly in my opinion, of enhancing the quality of life. When we put it all together, that's really what it's all about: enhancing the quality of life. We do things every day, from our second floor 911 system to the third floor OEM to our response to enhance the quality of life and service the public. So that is a huge, huge portion of our mission. I think it's always important to understand an organization's mission if we're going to be talking about things like we're talking about today. So I often get asked, well, could you summarize some of the responsibilities that Morris County has? Um, and or what, and what are the responsibilities that we do? So, I've kind of beat to a dead horse the word support, and obviously we support all of our municipalities through all of the disciplines: police, fire, EMS, and OEM. We have a lot of alerting responsibilities, meaning we alert people and to different things so we can be ahead of the curve, so to speak, when things are being talked about or forecasted to happen. Um, and we have a heavy um, resource support for large scale events because, as you can imagine, different things can happen in large scale events depending on what the event is and depending on the clientele of those events. Um, and we support, our fire departments with rehab, and we have a big presence in the mass casualty space. And um, I always like to mention that because one of the most, more significant events that occurred in the MCI space was in 2018 when we had the Mount Olive bus crash, which involved students that were coming from the Eastbrook Middle School in Paramus going to a trip to Waterloo Village. And that was a bad day. Um, and that was a day when we all came together and lives were saved because we were equipped and prepared to deal with what had just occurred. Um, we talked about preparedness, a couple slides ago. I mentioned that we prepare in case it happens. On May 17th, 2018, it actually happened. We had been training for mass casualties and still do pretty regularly. And then we had a pretty big one with 48 kids that was a game changer for us. So, um, as it's you know, amazing I'm actually talking about this today because on this coming Saturday, the Paramus High School actually has invited all of the Morris County responders to a pre-graduation celebration for the students at the school. And it's actually amazing to think that they're actually high school seniors graduating high school. And one of the things they asked for was to have all the responders that took care of them in 2018 to join them this Saturday. So we're all going there, and it's going to be a special day for sure. So that's a little bit about the MCI response, which uh, takes a lot of assets, a lot of people, a lot of training that happens all the time. So when you look at planning, training, exercises, providing community awareness, education, and things like this forum today that kind of just serve as a little bit of an educational outreach on disaster and home preparedness and that kind of stuff. Um, this is kind of where the space that we all put ourselves in for emergency management. So I hope at this point, only short into the program, you got a little bit of a more understanding of what occurs in emergency management as it relates to disaster preparedness or readiness, I should say. And now we could talk a little about some of the other things. So, the supply chain is key to what we watch. And, that's a topic right now. What is coming into the country, what is coming into the port, what's not coming in because of a variety of things that are happening in government. And us making sure that we have critical supplies on hand, and forecasting based on economic issues or political engagement, that what are we not seeing, or maybe what can we not afford to pay for based on higher prices or those kind of things. So i i, I always go back to COVID for this topic, because PPE uh, was a really good example of the difficulty that we found, um, getting that equipment. And luckily, we had maintained a decent inventory, certainly not sufficient for what we were up against, but enough of a supply that we didn't find ourselves in a tragic scenario. Now, we did have, it's not a secret that nursing homes and long-term care facilities were in a bit of a jam with some of that stuff based on lack of inventory, and we were the agency that actually provided a lot of that equipment throughout COVID to all those facilities. So, that's kind of an example of critical supplies on hand, and the supply chain and those kind of things to kind of point that out. So the other uh, point on the slide is public-private partnership. So I don't think there could be a better example of that, as using the Mars Chamber of Commerce. So I'll go back to Sandy, where I was in touch with the president of the chamber, Paul at the time, with regards to um, getting a partnership together with chamber members, because we had widespread devastation across New Jersey, billions of dollars of damages in one of the most destructive storms in New Jersey's history, and we couldn't fulfill things such as fuel. So we called the chamber to see who had access to tankers, which we did get through the chamber. So because we had gas stations that had underground fuel with no access to get it because power was out, and we had the ability to power gas stations up, but we needed to have some mechanism to actually transfer the fuel so we could use it. So that's the chamber helped us out with that, and we were able to open up one of a gas station that we actually took possession of. We powered it up, we bought all the gas, and we provided it to all the ambulances, police cars, and emergency responders to keep them moving at a time where it was critical. So that's that partnership with, and actually it was a chamber that actually one of the chamber members owned a food company, you know, catering, and we were able to work out some arrangements there too to for food. So that was our public-private partnerships, and many more through the chamber, but just to give you a little bit of example of that. So moving on to our emergency operations center, and that is a picture of the center. I know Frank's well familiar with it. That really is the hub of coordination. So during major events, um, that our EOC is staffed by key stakeholders, including the chamber. We have a business desk, as we commonly refer to it, um, and my easy description of the success of an EOC is we pack everybody into it that has some level of service delivery to the public. Because when you put everybody in one room, the leadership of certain entities, and you can crosstalk, and you can manage events collectively in one room, we don't have to call anybody because everybody's here. So we put everybody in one room. It's obviously very structured. We have systems in place that allow us to put people in certain groups, which I'll move on to next, that allow us to, um, deliver the services to the public that we need. So the room's divided up into 15 of what we call emergency support functions. There's some examples on the slide: mass care, public health, public safety. But the bottom line is everybody fits someplace. And that's how we crosstalk, and that's how we, take care of everything from sheltering to mental health to, public safety, police response, fire, EMS, all those kind of things happen throughout that forum. Moving right along. All right, so this is just one slide. People often ask, well, what do your response assets look like? So these are just some of the things that service 39 municipalities in Morris County. So we have the county ambulance system. We have off-road rescue type vehicles, our mass care truck, which has goods for 50 people. We have a mobile ambulance bus. We have a ballistic, um, what we call it's actually a ballistic ambulance, if you will. It's our MedCat. So it's a medical ballistic vehicle that allows us to go in for do rescues under hostile environments or anything that might provide a hazard to responders. We can just kind of get in there without a problem. And some other vehicles, our command post and that stuff. So a little bit about a few things that we have in our toolbox. So what can you do? So talking about the public and families and what can you do? So let's talk a little about that. So preparedness starts with awareness. We always preach to people, know the risks, know what's going to happen with weather, know about flooding. Just last night, we were posting on social media on Facebook yesterday issues that were occurring with flooding. We had some events last night that required response because of flooding. We had large trees that literally came down and shut roads down where we had elderly residents that, would pose a problem if we needed to get, emergency vehicles into them. We had to literally call out, front end loaders last night to get trees cut and moved. So, but we have a plan. And, on a lesser scale, when we're talking to in this kind of forum and the public, we tell people have a plan, have a kit, stay connected, through alert systems, news media, however, and have a plan. So, and we'll talk more about, that, what it takes to have that. But, disasters are increasing. We've seen what happens in pandemics. We've had wildfires most recently, and we've had outages that can affect daily life. And being prepared means your family can stay safe, stable, and informed. And I think that's something that we would all agree is important. So you see on this slide, Alert Mars. I'll talk a little bit more about it, but that is a great system because Alert Mars allows you to be in control of the data you get. It also can connect you with a profile that would pop up if you called 911, which would give our 911 operators information about you, your family, and your residents. The only way that that information would ever get access is if you dialed 911, it would put that profile up for the operator. So we do promote that. And that's, just a smart way of getting information, getting resources to you. If you dial 911 and have a profile set up, you don't really need to say anything if you can't, because although we'll try to talk to you, we will have that profile in front of us. We'll know you got 4 kids. We'll know you have 2 dogs. We know that you have your elderly mother living in the second floor front bedroom who's on oxygen, but for some reason you can't talk to us. So we're going to start sending all the resources that would address all those issues just because you have a profile set up when you dial 911. So I'm informing you so you can be better prepared as we go through this. And we'll, certainly talk about why preparedness matters coming up next. So, um, emergencies happen without warning. You know, uh, Nobody gets notified today for tomorrow or next week. I don't know what's going to happen, 10 minutes from now, let alone, anytime beyond that. So, disasters like storms, fires, power outages, medical emergencies can strike whenever. We obviously encourage preparedness because it reduces panic and confusion when every second counts. Preparedness saves lives, and a well-stocked home emergency kit and a clear family plan can help you respond quickly, access essential supplies, and stay safe until help arrives. And planning ahead helps limit the disruption to your daily life. It can prevent injuries, reduce property damage, and ensure your family's needs are met. And who wouldn't want to do that? So we're big on preparedness, and being ready at home and having peace of mind that if certain things happen, um, you've talked about it and you have a plan. So when you look at where we're located, are closest to New York City, a major urban target, certainly increases our risks from, regional events, terrorism, mass transit disruptions, cascading infrastructure failures, any of that stuff. I've mentioned Hurricane Sandy, and God knows we've had winter storms and flooding and high winds, all of which have resulted time to time on, issues in the county. So this is why preparedness is so important. We're part of one of the most densely populated and economically vital corridors in the U.S. Morris County is home to over 500,000 residents. We're a critical infrastructure hub with major highways, commuter rail lines, hospitals, data centers, corporate headquarters, utility infrastructure, and I could go on and on. And I don't have to tell the chamber group that we're an economic engine that significantly contributes to state and regional economies. So, and I always joke and say, what could possibly go wrong? And, it happens all the time when things go wrong and we have to respond to it. So, preparedness is key. We also talk about resiliency in the world of emergency management, and resiliency, in my mind, short is the ability to bounce back. It's building systems, habits that allow your household and community to recover more quickly from disruptions. So it goes beyond the long-term preparation. It's really about maintaining quality of life during disruptions. So that is what's going to put us into the emergency kit environment. So when we talk about an emergency kit, we're not talking about anything crazy. We're and some of this is designed specific to the family makeup. There's certain things that might be more important to you than others, right? There's maybe critical medications when other people don't necessarily have a medication issue. Maybe you have small children and pets, and other people don't have small, but some people have senior citizens living with them. So it depends. But you build your kit based on the needs of your particular family makeup. Important documents in a waterproof container is always a good move because it's always there and you're ready to go. And when you talk about the customization of the family and the things that would be specific are, do you have children, elderly considerations, pets, pre-existing medical conditions, and I always mention entertainment for children. And sometimes people laugh at me when I talk about that, but for those that have children, you know what it's like if you don't have something for them to do. And a unfortunate event that you're managing where you're trying to keep everybody calm with no entertainment for your children can be a disaster all by itself. So we make sure that that's on the list. All right. So as we get into the family disaster plan, things as simple as where will you meet? If X happens, where is everybody going to get together? And if you discuss that and have a plan or who's going to contact who, you're going to go to this location, contact Aunt Susie. Here's how you're going to do it. How are you going to make that contact if cell networks are down? Put it all in writing. Have a redundancy, couple different ways of pulling it off. And if you have a plan, you won't need it. And if you don't, you'll wish you did. So we do promote plans. You can go online. There's a million kits and plans, and FEMA is a great website to grab a lot of this stuff as well. So what steps can you take today? I am a big fan of Pack a Go Bag. If you were to go into my truck right now, you would find a variety of things because I don't know where I'll be tomorrow. And when I leave my house, I don't know when I'm coming back because it depends on what is happening. I've gone for days and glad I've had some things that I've learned over the years. I've been short a few things, so they have now been added to my go bag. So it's important to have things. If you're at a very simple, basic level, if you're going out and you know that you're traveling 3-4 hours and you're committed to go and you know it's going to be a rainy day and there's a storm in the forecast, Well, what happens if you become disabled? What happens if the temperature that you thought you were going to maintain in your car you can't maintain it because your car is disabled, and now you're stuck 2 hours in your car and you don't have a coat. You have no way to keep yourself warm. You don't have anything to drink to keep yourself hydrated. These are some basic things that don't take up much space to be in your vehicle. So pack a go bag, have things in your car for the day that you the unfortunate, it doesn't have to be a disaster. It could just be an unfortunate set of circumstances that have, got a flat tire, and you're tied up hours with it in a rural area that, is causing significant delays. I talked about, setting up a meeting point, making communication to people. Look at your home risks. What are your home risks if certain things occur? You can make a to-do list. Everything doesn't need to happen at once. Start small. But in order, people often say to me, "Well, how do I help in an emergency? Can I help other people?" And I always say, "Yeah, you can, but how are you set for your own home? Because if you're not comfortable for the event that just occurred, that we all could be impacted, and well, you're not going to want to leave your family or your home because you're going to be dealing with a situation there. If your things are in order and you have a plan and everything's good, you might be more inclined to be able to go help your neighbor, go down the street, go hang out with an elderly, uh, friend. So if you prepare ahead of time, you'll be in a good position to lend a helping hand elsewhere. Is what I always like to share. So the communication plan. Designate an out-of-state contact. It's always good to make sure that you have someone that is outside the area of the potential impact that you can make contact with, and that is the keeper of the communication plan. So everybody makes contact with that particular relative or friend, or someone that you choose, and ensure that every other family member knows who to reach out to. Everybody checks in with that person, says, "Hey, we all got separated," or can't call, or however you communicate, um, and that person serves as that point of contact, because we all rely on text over the phone when possible, but it's a weird feeling when those things aren't working. So um, have an out-of-state contact, agree on a reunification plan, and keep a copy of all that stuff obviously in your car. So when we talk about um, things like system-wide challenges, because preparedness isn't just about personal stuff, right? It ties into the broader systems: energy, food, water, communications, government, and that's where being informed strengthens the entire system. So we're a big fan of encouraging, signing up for alerts, paying attention to social media, certain things. I'm not terribly interested in what's happening in Washington D.C. when the emergency is local. So we encourage people to most all the municipalities in Morris County have what's called a rave system, and the rave system is branded to each local municipality. Like you'll see alert Chatham, alert Morristown, all those kind of things. It's the rave system that is personalized by the local municipality. If you live in that municipality, or just want to sign up for alerts that are generated by that municipality, you can do that. You can live in Florida and have relatives that live in Morristown and register for Morristown's alerts. You could be in you know anywhere and get this information. So we encourage sign up so you're aware of these kind of things, because that's where you get the water emergency notifications. That's where you'll hear see JCP&L alerts, or you can sign up for JCP&L alerts yourself as well. But all that stuff comes, and obviously we put out a lot of information as well. So it's important to stay informed, whether it's a system-wide issue or a local event. That's where you'll get your restoration times and how things are kind of moving along. So people always ask, how can we get involved? How can we help? We if we take care of our own um, household, how can we help other people? So we talk about joining the local community emergency response teams. Many municipalities have them. The Medical Reserve Corps, uh, which is under emergency management but run by our health team in Morris, and attend community preparedness events. Obviously, follow Morris County OEM on social media, volunteer or partner with local organizations, but bottom line is get involved in your community. And that's kind of how you stay engaged and involved and knowledgeable about what's going on. And some key takeaways that I want to make sure people take with them is that preparedness starts at home. Build a kit. Um, Morris County is actively working to increase resilience. We're doing it all the time, and small actions now can prevent crisis later. And one of the things that I'll talk about is kind of Route 80, because that's probably an example of you know a crisis, and preparedness and response and recovery all kind of takes all of this into consideration, because when that event first happened, and quite frankly, I've been up to that construction site more times than I care to mention. Um, but we have a really big response process that we had to put together for that event for that's in place right now. We're working with the contractor, and we have a team in the event that something were to happen while that construction process was in place, um, in case there was an additional event up there. And I talk about that because it encompasses really all the elements of emergency management. And we were very fortunate, quite frankly, that that issue didn't result in a major crisis where we didn't lose anybody or cars or anything that fell into the sinkhole. But there's a lot of things that are occurring behind the scenes to make sure that you know not only that the project stays on track, but more importantly that it's safe, and we're all on the same page with regards to the mission of what's occurring there. But we have a pretty big presence on the response side, dealing directly with the contractor up there to make sure that if something were to occur for the safety of the workers there, that we're prepared to respond and to um, mitigate that as best we can. So probably just a good example of all the different things that people probably are not thinking about beyond the ridiculous traffic that is occurring. The other piece I'll mention is that, and a credit goes to Bill Chegwigan and Wharton and many other surrounding municipalities for the resilience and for the outreach and for the um, energy that was put forth to service the small businesses that were negatively impacted by that are still impacted. And that's where the declaration got put into place, and small business loans were made available to those businesses to keep them afloat during this time when people are not necessarily patronizing them because of the traffic issues. So um, a lot of people don't think of those issues, but I wanted to mention it and give certainly a shout out to Wharton and to many of the surrounding towns that are participating in a lot of different activities to enhance, um, you know, issues for their residents and certainly the businesses. So I'm realizing I'm ahead of schedule, which is not a bad thing, I suppose. But I will certainly take a bunch of questions because I am at the end of my presentation, and happy to answer anything that anybody might have.
Thank you so much, Jeff. That was so informative. If anybody has questions, they can certainly unmute themselves and just ask or put them in the chat.
I see. Oh, that's just
Jeff, I got a question for you. This is Frank Pinto.
good.
We worked together during a couple disasters. Um, I did not get the experience of the new Emergency Operations Center during a disaster. So can you tell us what are the benefits of having that new EOC versus the the rooms that we had in the fire academy for Sandy? How was it? How did it help all of the responders in overall response to that
Sure.
disaster?
I actually forgot you were that old, Frank, but I'm only kidding.
I am that old.
Um, so it's a game changer. I mean, you're comparing a room versus some, the technology that we now have. So this entire building, we have the 911 center on the second floor, which is tied directly into us in the EOC on the third floor, and we now have a very robust communications center that services a lot of Morris County across all the disciplines. So there's a lot of computerization that automatically identifies certain needs in communities based on the start of that phone call to us when an event happens. And we are now programmed to get things moving extremely quickly. So we have a lot of technology. We have the capability of monitoring weather. We have, obviously private weather vendors, different ones because, you could turn on one channel and get one forecast, turn next and get something completely different. So we pay attention. Our electronic board that's here allows us to monitor roadway temperatures through the state. And we can, in essence, predict based on data some of the outcomes that will be occurring during the particular time frame that we're worried about. So, we're working with, Chris Fitz and his team and the road crews and what time people are staging and who's putting it down salt and what time you think we're going to be plowing and and ultimately what time is all this going to occur, because it really, there's a lot of planning when people go to work in the morning with an unknown forecast and all of a sudden it starts to snow to the point where roads get covered, conditions change. We're sitting with the county administrator trying to make the right decision. Is it safer to keep people here? And based on the time frame that the storm might stop and we can clean the roads up, or do we need to get people out of here and get them home? Or is it dangerous to put them on the roads? So there's a lot of that, but the data that we have in the EOC and the crosstalk amongst the ESFs that represent the different disciplines between roads and everything else, and working with our state partners that we're tied into, looking at overall conditions from a weather perspective. That's one of the big things that happen. And the other thing that quite frankly happened is, we're managing, fire assets. And most recently, we had some really tough times with, forest fire issues with some of those fires. Just had a big one, down south that I was, engaged with. But it's all about coordination. And I don't think oftentimes the public understands that, it's not just one fire truck coming out of a firehouse. When the bigger events happen, there's a lot of coordination. And when you're moving a lot of assets to one event, we behind the scenes have to worry about, well, what's happening with the rest of the county? What happens if something else happens? And now we just moved everything over to, one town and we're bare with response assets somewhere else. So we have to backfill that stuff pretty quickly with other assets and we have to bring it in. And right now we're involved in World Cup and FIFA planning, which that's a whole nother presentation. So, the EOC in short has been a game changer from what you were used to back in the day. And I think that's just an example of how government and how commissioners and, our administration is, forward thinking with regards to what we have to be doing to make sure we're in a position to best serve the public. And the days of, if we were to walk back into the rooms that you're familiar with, we couldn't even possibly service in today's response world what we're doing currently.
Great question, Frank.
Thank you.
So, Jeff, we have a few questions in the chat. Are there communication means at municipal buildings if internet goes down?
At municipal buildings?
Yes, that's the question.
Well, I can't speak for municipal buildings. I mean, we do have systems in place where we could stand up emergency systems that will give us phone and internet capabilities for a disaster kind of event. We have plans with Verizon and other AT&T, that they have mobile units that literally could bring in, that they could post anywhere we designate, and they would, in essence, stand up a power system that would give us the capability to communicate via phone and web. As far as a normal power outage that a municipality might encounter, that's where generators come in. So if the municipality's power went out today, post Sandy, a lot of people are completely functional because they have redundant power sources, as we do here. We have two, systems duplicated here. So, and we have had the power go out, and you can imagine that we can't have a 911 center with no power. So we have systems in place and backup systems in place to make sure that happens. And municipalities, some have done very well with backup generators for that particular reason.
Actually, I'm the one that asked that question. Hi, I'm Lisa with Grow Green Morristown. And I was thinking more like when the internet goes down and like if you've lost track with your family and you're just trying to connect with people, can they go, do we recommend to people that they go to like I live in the township of Morris, that we go to our municipal centers and like put a note on a bulletin board or something to reach people? Or
Well, that, quite frankly, that's all part of the plan that we're talking about. That's all part of developing that plan. Um, you know, and I tend to try to go with ideas. There's certainly nothing wrong with, picking a municipal place as a gathering point. The problem is that, is that municipal, if that municipality is like in the same town that you live in, could that place be impacted as well? It's not open, it's locked because they don't have power either. The police side of the street probably would have a backup generator, but does your municipal government have one in the municipal building? I'm not sure. I think Morris Township actually does. So it really just depends. And that, what I say to that is to check with the local municipal coordinator or some representative of the municipality. Say, hey, I'm trying to develop a plan for where I'm going to, reunify with my family locally. Is there any problem if I were to pick the parking lot of your facility? And, you know, and they'll definitely have a conversation with you about that. No problem.
okay. Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I'll continue, or Lisa, you can, but
I also put in there, my kids are grown and in college, but we have quite a few people that come like to volunteer at the urban farm and things like that don't necessarily have some basic skills, and they're not okay they are okay with being called out for that they don't understand it. But as you know, sometimes your parents are not the place where people actually listen to what you need to say. But there are other ways to reach what I call emerging adults. And I wondered if there's some sort of emerging adult series that we could run, obviously with food or maybe some sort of gamification of it, to encourage people to learn about basic skills, basic first aid, some of these, like putting together a kit, for yourself. Maybe even, I don't even know if this is suggested anymore, like turning off the gas if there's a tornado in your area and you're vacating your home or something like that.
There are really a lot of useful videos and educational series on the FEMA side that I would tell you to look at, because there's everything from, gas emergencies to, senior citizen engagement, all kind. I think you'll find everything. If you just search it, you'll find a educational um, video on that topic. I haven't found much that doesn't exist. And some municipalities oftentimes do, they'll do like at the senior center, they'll do an awareness for seniors, emergency awareness for seniors, where either the local emergency management group from the local municipality is doing it, or they sometimes call us and we combine it. But you'll find a lot of that stuff right online.
I'm more concerned actually about our emerging adults, which is people that have just crossed into adulthood, but you wouldn't necessarily qualify, or they wouldn't even call themselves really adults. But I will check with our local services and see.
You
what
talking about
they
like are you talking teens?
Yeah, like
Yeah,
18,
they have
18 to 22. 18 to
Yeah,
24, you know?
they have videos for them too.
Okay,
Yeah, they have all that.
great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Lisa, you had one other good question. Do we still have some sort of siren system, and what do they mean?
Well, that's a town by town topic. A lot of sirens have disappeared over time, but some municipalities still have a siren. Many of those sirens are specific to fire. That's how they get the volunteers in their local town to know that there's an event that would, signal them to, either go to the firehouse or, pick up a radio or do something to find out what emergency is occurring. Some towns do have sirens, but I always tell people check with your local municipality to see if they use what level of alert warning they use. Many, if not all, have some level of electronic notification system, which I mentioned, I encourage people to sign up. But I would check with the local town you're inquiring about the siren. The siren in Morristown, since I know Morristown well, that used to exist back in the day does not exist anymore.
Good to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Jeff, Paul had a question, not Jeff, comma, Paul had a question. With the public's reliance on cell phones, what is the communications method when there is no cell service or an EM pulse interrupts electronics?
Yeah, that's well, when cell phones are out, cell phones are out. Unless, you happen to have a satellite phone, um, that would be a little bit different. And that's where, we get involved in, for major events, the phone system that the program they have, they call it cows, meaning they'll bring in these big communication infrastructure um, units that restore phone service, in a geographic area for us to manage the event and interface and get alert warning out to the public. But if the phones, obviously the phone systems are down, sometimes the phones are down in specific areas because of a tower issue that limits the issue. It's not necessarily down as the carrier is not necessarily down. It's that maybe a tower got hit or something happened which decreased the capability of a phone service. But in the case where it's completely out, then that's where you have to have a backup plan as to where you're going to meet or who you're going to get in contact with and how that contact would occur. A lot of it is, sometimes municipal buildings or libraries that are on generator, people go there to get on the computers because they're powered up and sending, specific emails. Some families have, an email that they establish like, paulfamily@gmail.com. Everybody's signed on to it. Anybody's just got to get to a working computer. It's on a battery backup or generator and send an email out and say, hey, here's what occurred. We're safe. Talk to you soon. So things like that, just thinking outside the box.
Where am I going to get information from you on how to manage the emergency when the
I'm sorry, I can't hear him at all.
Oh, sorry, is that better?
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. I forgot my boom mic was up. Well, my question is, I'm seeing cars are going to start eliminating the AM radio system. And so if we're without cell phones and or more dramatically, an electromagnetic pulse from, the sun or wherever takes out a lot of electronics, how am I getting information from you to know what to do?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly one of the pending topics. I mean, that's a pending topic that I don't know that we've dug that deep into. I mean, we have looked at redundant power systems and things, to keep us afloat. But, that's a topic because obviously we only know about the communication platforms that exist today. There are some emerging talks of different things, moving forward, but none of which I've seen on the implementation stage yet.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions before we wrap up? All right, this was so informative. Thank you, Jeff, for taking the time today. Thank you to everyone who joined us, and please join us for our next 2 Thursdays at noon. We have 2 more seminars happening. Have a great day, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.